I'm speaking to express my outrage at the U.S. Supreme Court ruling in the Dobbs decision, which overturned Roe v. Wade. Our nation's had a number of infamous decisions through our history. The Dred Scott case deciding African Americans were property. Plessy v. Ferguson, where the court approved separate but equal and legitimized Jim Crow. But ultimately, the courts corrected the error of their ways. Never before have we gone backwards until just now, after 50 years of a constitutionally guaranteed right of a woman to direct her own health care, the courts have declared that the states have the ability to restrict that fundamental right. Judicial modesty. I mean, that was known of that the judiciary in an unwritten rule would look as to what most people in America would feel. It's overwhelmingly the opinion of Americans that women should be able to exercise their own reproductive choices. Yet no longer. 5 individuals have put their opinions ahead of that of the great majority. So much for precedent. Stare decisis. Roe, 50 years and its progeny, and yet just thrown out, in opposite to what the court would routinely do. So much for judicial integrity. Justice Kavanaugh, Justice Coney Barrett, misleading in their sworn testimony that they would respect precedent. The strict interpretation of the Constitution, what's known as originalism, it's just a means to get to an end result. To argue the Constitution is not a living document, rather something to kept in amber, just ignores logic. We're to hold ourselves to what the world was like in 1781. I mean, I guess that's what the dean of all of this, Justice Scalia, would have wanted. Famously saying the Constitution is not alive. Rather, it's dead, dead, dead. I am far from a constitutional scholar, but the Equal Protection Clause in the 14th Amendment prohibits states from denying any citizen equal protection under the law. The United States Supreme Court has allowed states to deny equal protection to half the population, taking away their reproductive freedom. How can women be co-equal citizens if not given the choice to direct their own health care? As a woman, you have no choice but to put your own life at risk with maternal mortality on the rise, and if you're a minority, you face 3 times that type of risk. Equal protection. Sadly, for the next 20 years, at least based upon the composition of the Supreme Court, nothing's going to change. So what do we do beside bang our fist, beside raise our voices at rallies? All important things, but first and foremost, we have to vote. We have to assure that we elect candidates who respect a woman's right to reproductive freedom. Beyond that, I suggest there's even more that we can do. There are now 13 states with full trigger bans strictly prohibiting a woman's right to direct her own health care. There's an additional 13 moving in that same direction through their legislators. Our country's history is filled with nonviolent actions to protest a deprivation of one's civil rights. I think of the Montgomery boycott, the bus boycott. Rosa Parks was arrested and fined, and then suddenly all of the citizens that felt that it was unequal treatment, they stopped using public transportation. They hitchhiked, they walked to work, they biked. And it meant something. It was a linchpin that began to make a difference in the civil rights movement. Recently, the North Carolina bathroom bill segregating the LBTG community resulted in major corporations like Deutsche Bank, PayPal, the NCAA. They made a statement and said, you know, we're going to make a state pay for their closed-mindedness. I'm challenging us, you, all of us, to do the same. When you decide where you're going to go on vacation, spend your hard-earned money, don't go to the states that limit a woman's right to her own reproductive freedom. If you're choosing a college, I've heard so many young people be so articulate. Don't go to a college in one of those states. There's plenty of other great choices. if you're the American Bar Association, AMA, the architects, engineers, other trade associations, business conventions, take your business elsewhere. Send a signal that your profession, your occupation, your trade, you respect a woman's reproductive freedom. You know, there's 13 states with these trigger bans and more to come where just in the next year or two there's a Super Bowl, World Cup, NBA All-Star game scheduled during that time. Boy, if any of those major leagues really care about a woman's right to her own reproductive freedom to direct her own health care, don't go there. Avoid those places. And let them know there's consequences that go along with their willingness to discriminate as to 50% of our population. You know, here in New Jersey, I and all of us should be proud of our continued efforts to imbue in our state laws a woman's right to make her own decisions. I've heard incessantly over the past several years people say, my body, my choice, over the simple act of putting a cloth mask over their mouth to protect others. Yet those same individuals are ready to restrict a woman's right to direct their own health care. While we should continue to rally, to make our outrage known, to exercise our rights at the voting booth, it's also time to walk the walk in protest. And together, we can make a difference.